Freedom's Way National Heritage Area is a remarkable example of inventing the New England community.
It all begins with place, that mosaic of subtle beauty that includes the 45 towns of Freedom's Way. Stretching from the mouth of the Mystic River to the rocky streams of southern New Hampshire, the place shifts dramatically more than once. Geological wrinkles and divergent waterways, tough terrain, and fertile outwash plain. A bog here, an escarpment there, challenges to the Indians who created communities long before New England, but even more to the English immigrants whose thousand-year-old communal traditions built on a relatively narrow spectrum of place choices and social options. One thing was obvious even to the first comers. The New World provided new resources, and traditions began to change right there. Take Medford, for instance. Mr. Craddock's farm on the north side of the Mystic River. In 1635, this chunk of wild, unsettled land was a gift to Matthew Craddock from the king. It was a fine gift because it included miles of old-growth timber and an easily navigable waterway, plus additional income from livestock imports, urgently needed to feed and power a new economy. When Craddock's land was sold, the area had changed so much that his successor found great profit in cutting the farm into lots, all surrounding an invaluable bridge over the Mystic River, and so created the first mixed-use subdivision in America. A tide mill ground corn, mud from the riverbanks formed bricks, shipyards expanded along the tidal flats, launching the sloops and schooners that worked the fishing circuit north to Maine and south to the Caribbean. Plantation sugar distilled into the rum that filled the punch bowls of taverns and inns throughout the East Coast and beyond, as Medford's cart paths stretched farther north and west, over the river and through the woods, as Lydia Childs would write 2 centuries later from her window overlooking the Mystic. Farther west was a different story altogether. Taming the wilderness, spreading civilization, were driving forces that led to the founding of Concord, Sudbury, and Woburn. Together, they formed a protective arc around Boston. And here the settlers looked for the traditional basics of country life. They sought out large tracts of workable land, river access, including fresh hay meadow and rich soil, smaller streams with falls for mill power, varied timberland. The Council of Massachusetts Bay spelled out communal requirements: a meeting house and a school to be built, and a minister settled in town. Land of all kinds apportioned to each man according to his community value. Home lots improved within 3 to 5 years, including house, cleared land, and fencing. Militia training was mandatory for every adult male, as was road work. Stone walls defined the colony's right-of-way. Common sense and tradition agreed that communal activity should be focused in a compact town center. Concord's meeting house, its graveyard, tavern, corn mill, and craft shops all clustered around a crossroad along with its earliest dwellings, all in the heart of a 6-mile square town. Over the next 2 centuries, some public buildings changed, joined by courthouse, jail, Masonic Lodge, and Catholic Church, but the communal purpose of Concord's compact town center endured. Sudbury's town center developed in a similar pattern. The close clustering of town hall, grange, graveyard, and monuments on a hilly site, overlooked by a watchful Minuteman, encourage a sense of enduring community. Outside that core, the landscape, even today, is full of traditional artifacts of New England life. Heritage breeds and weathered barns, 18th century capes and 19th century farm complexes, the poor farm on the edge of town, split rail fencing, and the ubiquitous stone wall. Home lot fields of mixed food crops are harder to find. Apples remain.
Your choice of good things to drink are rather limited.
They drank fermented beverages like hard cider. They also drank beer or ale, or if you were wealthy enough, maybe a fruited brandy.
North and west of those first agrarian towns, Freedom's Way is a territory of hill towns. Take Dunstable, for instance. It has all the elements one would expect of an ideal community core. Start with a white clapboard church, a later bandstand, baseball field behind, newer elementary school to the side. Fronting the newer school buildings is the Union School, constructed when neighborhood schoolhouses were abandoned in favor of centralized education. Here's a building that seems to have tavern written all over it, at the crossroads between Pepperell in one direction and Hollis, New Hampshire in the other. Don't forget the horse trough in the middle of the intersection. And, in place of honor, probably the grandest house in town. A federal brick ender, expanded, obviously, over the years since 1800 or so. Finally, the Sarah Roby Memorial Building, designed to serve as both town hall and library. Separate memorials to veterans of each war fan out, around one saluting Dunstable's Minutemen and Revolutionary soldiers and the cause they fought for.
So blacksmithing is a trade. And all that means is it's a specialty that I know how to do that most of my neighbors don't know how to do.
Trades call forth images of small shops and solitary workers, or maybe a sawmill or a cooperage, a spinner, quarryman, stonecutter. But the early 19th century saw innovation that transformed craft production into industry and forever changed the shape of New England communities. The Middlesex Canal, 27 miles of uninterrupted transportation from Chelmsford and Nashua to Malden, instantly beat out wagons, only to be beaten out itself by a proliferation of railways connecting large and small towns in every direction. Early manufactories built at old dam sites among hayfields, or on land worthless for agriculture. But new towns were spreading their main streets along the river source of power, concentrating housing near the mills, or in neighborhoods marked by workers' churches, all providing support and a touch of home. Mill owners, though, distanced themselves, atop a nearby hill or across the river where later success squeezed them out.
From the early 1800s, when it starts turning into a city, and the first people that come in are the Yankees off of the farms. They need more employees, and the Irish start coming in. But the French Canadians, started coming down from Canada, and it just has continued happening right on through today. And you still have people coming right now to a city like Fitchburg in order to make their way in America.
Because of the new markets and demand, older or smaller mills in Freedom's Way specialized and operated well into the 20th century. Suspenders in Shirley and picture frames in Arlington, Gardner Furniture, Winchendon, wooden toys. To say nothing of millions of crates, machine parts, plastic products. Too often, change and conflict go hand in hand. In Freedom's Way, the memory of revolutionary sacrifice is never far away. The Minuteman looms large over the landscape. But large or small, basic or artistic, at Memorial Park or historic graveyard, the statues and the names of soldiers remain a public reminder that they defended the communities from which they came.
Honor the sacrifices of all who have served here, from World War I, World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Persian Gulf War, the war in Afghanistan, and the Iraq War.
Elsewhere, this need to remember takes living form.
In case of danger, fly to the woods with our children. Fly to the woods with the children. He imagined that I would have notice if the enemy was on its way. There would be post riders coming out to warn us and spread the alarm. But imagine the knock at the door, perhaps in the middle of the night, and you have moments to make sure you've buried the silver, and then gather your little flock around you and run for your lives. That is how we lived.
The New England community is a place sustained, often as not, by old traditions made new. The thriving industrial village of East Pepperell lost its factories. Its water power was redirected to hydroelectricity. In Westford and Clinton, rejuvenated factories appeal to a spectrum of potential buyers. Immigrant clubs adapt to new tastes, but preserve the panakaku familiar to their forebears. New immigrants build new supports. Some lost neighborhoods are commemorated by modern street art like Nashua's History of Inclusion. Even farming, most traditional of jobs and land uses, reinvents itself as community changes. Seeding the field still comes first, though the crop may be triticale instead of hay. Broad fields that once required a whole community to harvest are cut in a day. Sometimes new entities take on old roles. A venerable family farm is brought back to life by volunteers and the city of Leominster. Flat's Mentor Farm trains refugees and novice farmers.
We have never turned anybody away. So if a person, black, green, or neon purple comes, we don't discriminate. And you come and you say, I want to be a farmer. So okay, so the first year you get your plot for free. You also get the infrastructure that we have. We are grant funded, and most of the times we don't have money.
A new generation in Freedom's Way learns traditional farming tasks. Agricultural fairs still judge stellar products of local farms, but add a bit of carny that would have shocked the Middlesex Agricultural Society. Farmers' markets have returned to favor, a shared venue for small producers, local customers, and new products. Communities come together in work. They come together in celebration. Communities speak their minds. They make music of their inspirations.
Some on the mountain You're gonna reap just what you sow. You're gonna reap just what you sow.
When it comes down to it, inventing, changing, sustaining the New England community is always ongoing. And Freedom's Way is a remarkable example of that process.